for joining me today. Are you thinking about selling your business and you just don't know what to do? What are the pieces? How do I do that? How do I sell my business? There's a lot of things that you need to consider there. So I have asked Dane DeSantis to join me today. Dane is with Hallmark Business Brokers, and they specialize in business buy and sell in the Southwest Florida area. So I've known Dane for, I guess, about probably 20 years. And he and I both worked in the software industry. And he decided about 10 years ago that he wanted to pivot in his life and decided to become a business broker in Florida. And one of the things that I find interesting about Dane is that in the time that we spent as software people, he was always so customer centric and was always concerned about me and my company and my customers. So I never had a problem asking Dane, will you help me with this? And asking him sometimes to actually talk directly to my customer, which sometimes you don't want someone you're dealing with talking directly to your customer. I never had a problem asking Dane to do that. So that relationship was really, really good. Then when I found out he was doing this on the business broker, I thought, this is great. I bet he's doing a phenomenal job. Well, when we connected, I realized that he has a very unique culture and process that he does with his business buying and selling. So, welcome, Dane. And I am going to ask you to tell us about your process and what makes you different as a business broker.
Well, first, Annette, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure, and it's always so wonderful to reconnect with so many of the people, especially you. I always feel like we had a great relationship, so it's great reconnecting with you. So, to answer your question about what makes us a little bit different, it's what you just talked about. We took the experience that I had, right, as in software, selling my product through companies like yours as a reseller, building that relationship, creating that opportunity where you felt comfortable enough to refer me out to your client because we were selling this software. And I took that and brought it into this industry. So our business is 100% based on relationships. If you think about it, the reality is I am taking two people on opposite ends of the spectrum. They are essentially adversaries. Somebody wants to buy something for as little as possible. Somebody wants to sell something for as much as possible. And I'm bringing them together to create a transaction. Once that contract is written and they've agreed upon a purchase price and all the other things that go into it, they are now adversaries. Or they are now allies. They're allies, right? They're rowing in the same direction. They're trying to get this over the finish line, and that's what we do. Is we facilitate that process of getting the transaction over the finish line. Realistically, one of the things I learned early on in my career as a business broker is if the buyer and seller don't like each other, the deal won't go through. Because it was about my second year in. I lost a $2 million sale over a $5,000 air conditioner. The seller did not like the buyer. I said, I'll pay for the air conditioner myself. He's like, nope. So what makes us unique is that relationship. Because think about it. If I have a conversation with you as a seller and then this guy over here as the buyer, it's only going through me, right? So if we've got to communicate something, this telephone game doesn't exist. It's just you to me to him. Or her, or whatever the case may be, seller to the agent, and then back over to the buyer, and vice versa. So I tell everybody that I'm that's part of a transaction. The goal is to create a relationship with both parties because it allows me to have open and honest conversations with both parties, and that's really what everybody wants. Now, what makes us a little bit different as well from our area believe it or not, there's 1,000 people a day moving to Florida. 300 of those people are moving to the county in which we serve, which is Sarasota County. So if there's that many people moving, and if you look at it statistically, 80% of the people who buy a business through us are from out of the state. 40% are from out of the country. So building upon this relationship, I am helping people. Where do I send my kid to school? I need a doctor. I need an attorney. I need a CPA. I've got all of these. My sphere of influence, which is generally about 12 people, is probably 50 to 100. And my contact sphere is probably 500, where most people's are 100, because I need to know that many people, because there are that many people coming into this area and needing things. And yet I am from New Jersey, and we got a guy for everything. So that's kind of what I do down here is, oh, do you have this? I get calls all day, every day. Hey, do you know somebody who can do this? Do you know somebody who can do that? It's about building relationships. And the nice thing is the 5 other agents that I have here, they're all the same. They all want to build relationships. They all want to cultivate the opportunity to create relationships, not only within their own network, but outside of their network, because we basically are connectors, and that's what we're doing. So what I call myself essentially, and what we call ourselves, is problem solvers and connectors. I want to solve a problem before it's created, and connect 2 people together so that we can make this transition as smooth as possible.
That's great. So I want to, so a little bit of a off-road on that is Dane and I were talking earlier about culture and how every business has a culture. And his culture is a little bit different than, I would say, the typical, if you think about business brokers or maybe real estate agents. I mean, I don't want to diss anybody here, but just what you think about, that they're all out for themselves and they're just individuals. We've all seen it. But I think Dane has a different culture, I think, which makes it successful for your customers, right? Because of that culture. So let's talk about that a little bit, and about how, Dane and I were talking about earlier, and I always say this: every business has a culture, every business. So if you don't define your culture, it will define itself. And a lot of times it's not good. We've all seen it. You walk away from a business and you think, wow, what a mess. Well, it's a lot of time because that culture has not come from top down, right? It's just kind of made, and not, it's just people make their own narrative on it. So, Dane, if you'll talk a little bit about your culture and how you have cultivated that over the years.
Absolutely. So as you had said, oftentimes brokerages or real estate offices are kind of a one for, in it for myself, right? So they're kind of cutthroat. It's just the nature of the industry. Ours is a little bit different in that we are all for one. Everybody will step up for someone within our organization without expecting anything in return. And I'll give you a quick story. I love telling stories because it makes it feel real. Last week, I was on a cruise in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and I had a deal that was closing. And we are always there for our closings, right? Because you never know what's going to happen. You have to have conversations. Well, being in the middle of the ocean, I was unable to obviously be at the closing. One of my agents stepped up and handled it like an absolute pro, and got everything. And it wasn't easy. There were some things that had to happen last minute, and she did everything so flawlessly. When I got back, both the buyer and the seller gave Kathy, my office, accolades of how amazing she was, and that everything was handled. And the reality is, it wasn't as smooth as they thought it was. She did so many things in the background to keep it away from them, because she knew how to handle it. And she did just as good of a job as I did, or I could have, right? And if Kathy was on vacation, or Laura or Steve or anybody else, I would sit in for them and do their closing. I would show a business for them, and I expect nothing in return. I'm the owner of the company, and someone would say, yeah, of course you should do that. Well, what about the other agents? They'll all step up for one another because they know that I would be there for them just like they're there for me. And it goes with all other 5 agents in the company. And I can't say that for a lot of companies. I mean, I hear it all the time as in my line of work. Oh, I have clients, I have employees who say, well, that's not my job, right? That's like one of the worst things you can do. And unfortunately, sometimes we have a culture or have cultivated a culture that has that, but we definitely do not have that here. And so for us, it's relationships and it's helping one another with expecting nothing in return.
So you were very intentional though about that culture. And that probably, like me, when I had my business, I was very intentional about it because I saw other businesses that didn't have good cultures and saw the ramifications of that. So I think you learn that through years of experience and seeing other businesses too. So, and we were talking about earlier that, and this is something I've always said too, is, I can teach you the job, most likely, depending on what the job is. I can teach you the job, but I can't teach you how to be nice. This is what Dane said. I'll say.
Yeah.
He said, I can't teach you how to be nice if you don't have that already instilled in you. And, and that's part of your culture. So, which makes it interesting. So I just thought that was an interesting, and again, going back to having known Dane in a previous life, that was his own culture, I would say. You have your own culture as well as the culture of the business as well. So you brought that in to the business and made that what it is. So I'm sure you all are wildly successful. I bet you get referrals all the time.
We do. What I say is hire attitude, not aptitude, because you can teach people. Annette, when I was doing the job, the software job, right? I was implementation, right? I was implementation, and then the company said, "Hey, why don't you get into sales?" I was like, "I don't like talking to people. I'm not getting into sales." And realistically, all I did, because I didn't know what I was doing, I was just nice to people. And imagine this, I called them back when they called me, or if I didn't know the answer to something, I just found the answer, right? I was transparent, I was nice, and I was respectful, and it allowed me to build relationships. Like I can't begin to describe how important relationships are to growing a successful business. It's a heck of a lot easier to build a business with relationships than, just kind of, I don't even know what transaction. Right? Mm-hmm. Relational versus transactional. It can be done. Don't get me wrong. There are plenty of companies that build their business based on a transactional mindset. For me, it's just my personality and the people around me. Relationships are the key to our success.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, and I was thinking when you were saying that think about you and I, we haven't connected in 10 years. Mm-hmm. Right. Dane moved out of the software business, and I knew that he was doing a business brokerage, but I really didn't know anything else about him. And then all of a sudden I saw a video on LinkedIn that he did, and I reached out to him, and it was like that 10 years had not passed. That relationship and just the easy talking had never passed. The 10 years had not passed. So, that's a testament to relationships that you have in business and how important it is. And, going back to what Dane was saying, that relationship between the buyer, the seller, and the broker, is really important. It's the same thing as the relationship of your leadership team and the people that are going to succeed you in your business is extremely important. So one other thing, so going kind of on that same vein is, Dane, I'd like to ask you, what are some things that people need to consider if they are considering selling their business and using a broker? What's a sort of, we'll say just a little checklist of the things that they need to look for?
When working with a broker or selling? Yes. Business as a whole. Okay.
Looking mostly, if you're thinking about selling through a broker, what should they look for when choosing a broker? What is it?
Yeah, first and foremost, it's personality. I would say you have to get along with the person that you're going to be essentially hitching your wagon to for the next 9 to 12 months. On average, that's how long it takes to sell a business from listing agreement to money in your pocket. And as I tell the people that I work with, especially the sellers, there will be times where we won't talk, right? Early on in the process, we're not really going to talk much. I'm not going to waste your time. It's what you've hired me for, is to deal with the tire kickers and the people who don't want to give me information and who aren't financially qualified. And so I'm not going to be calling you every Friday to tell you that there's no updates. But when we've got what I'd like to call a fish on the line, or somebody who's very interested in your business, and they're asking questions, we're going to be talking a lot. So you've got to like me, I've got to like you. As you go through the process of deciding who it is that you want to work with, generally speaking, however they are at the beginning of the process, that's how they're going to be throughout the process. So I can liken it to me when I'm talking to a seller and I'm asking them for financial information, if I'm asking them for employee information, for their furniture, fixtures, and equipment information, whatever information I'm asking for, how quickly they get it to me, that's a sign of how quickly they're going to respond when we're in the middle of a process that you've got a buyer who's trying to get a loan and they need a document and it takes a week to get. I can't do that. That's going to slow us down, right? So pick somebody who you get along with personally, and pick somebody who is going to kind of work at your speed. But first and foremost, what I would tell you is, no matter what, build that relationship, understand somebody who had, or find somebody who's clear and concise and can communicate well. And it's all about what you want, right? If this is your 10th time selling a business and you know the ropes and you just want somebody to be there for you and do it, well, find somebody that does that. But if you need somebody who's going to hold your hand, who's going to explain everything, that's somebody who you should pick, and ask the right questions. Like, be very specific, that's what I would say is I am always looking for somebody who is specific about what it is that they want, because communication can be so misconstrued. You saying something to me, I take it one way and you may mean it another way. It's up to me to say, oh, is this what you meant? Or this is what I heard you say, right? So clear and concise communication is really important too. Because for me, again, generally selling your business, it's probably one of the largest transactions you're going to do besides a house. You want to be comfortable with the person that's handling that for you.
Yeah. So when you, if let's say you are representing the seller, so often, well, I guess I should ask a question. The buyer also has a broker involved, or maybe not. How often are you dealing with another broker?
Okay, so let's talk about that. There's about 15 as of the date of this recording. There's anywhere between 12 and 15 states that require a license to earn a commission to broker the sale of someone else's business. In the state of Florida, that is a real estate license. So I hold the same license that a residential real estate agent, a commercial real estate agent, is all the same license. Also in the state of Florida, which is unique, there's only a couple of other states that do it. There is something that's called, they do not allow dual representation. So you can't represent the seller and the buyer at the same time. But what you can do is a transaction representation. So that's what we are. We are transaction brokers. I do not work for the seller. I do not work for the buyer. I work for the transaction. Because if I work for either of the one parties, I have a fiduciary responsibility to that party, and it makes it a lot more difficult to have transparent, open, honest conversations. So another thing that's a little unique about our business, specifically Hallmark, is we do not co-broker. We don't work with other brokers in our area. And it's been out of experience over the last 10 years. I've gotten burned by 3 different brokers in our community. So I've just chosen not to do it. And the reality is it actually works better for both buyer and seller, because we can have that open lines of communication. There is no fiduciary responsibility. I'm on both sides helping them ask the right questions and get again, we're rowing in the same direction. So if I've got an adversary on the other side, that's a little difficult, right? Now, that's not the industry norm, right? It's different in every state. Even in Florida, there is a lot of co-brokering, but for us, our office, just to give you an idea, this is startling. Only 10% of businesses that get listed actually sell. Our closing ratio is 80%.
Wow.
Now, there are still some that we can't sell, but we have to be doing something right if our average is 70% higher than industry average.
So that might be a question that someone could ask if you're looking at a broker. You know, what's your rate? So I want to go back to what you said, because that is so interesting that you are representing the transaction.
Mm-hmm.
So and go back to, in Florida, you can do that. Can you do that in other states?
Like California, I'm pretty sure California has it. A lot of Florida real estate comes from California, so there are some states that do allow it. And again, a majority of states have no sort of licensing whatsoever. So yes, I would say for the majority, you could do that. Also, what I will say is generally the seller does pay the broker who is helping transact the
Yeah.
business. Yeah.
So I'm like amazed at what you just said, that so not every state do you have to be licensed. So that might be another question, because thinking about myself, I didn't go through a broker, but had I gone through a broker, I'd want somebody who was licensed, right? And had gone through training. And, so those might be questions. And also, I think about, what experience do you have? So, you've got 10 years now. What experience, are you one chapter ahead of me? And so those are some questions too. That's interesting, because I always assumed that you had to be licensed, right, to do these transactions. I'm just like a little blown away.
Now remember, so again, I can only speak for the state of Florida. Most business transactions are what's called asset sales, right? Where in the state of Florida, you have to have a license. It's so crazy, but you have to be and I don't know what the number license is, but when you sell stock, even if it's not traded, a real estate agent can't do that. So that has to go through an attorney, and
Right.
that type of paperwork has to be drawn up. I vaguely remember Florida has made that change recently, where agents can have they can do something with stock. Don't hold me to it, but that's why there isn't a lot of licensing required from the business transaction perspective, is because generally it's asset sales. But again, if you're looking at it, it's about 35 to 38 states have no licensing requirements whatsoever, which is kind of shocking, quite frankly.
It is shocking to me. So I've learned a lot today, because I had no idea. I just assumed. But again, I think, my thought about it is, I want somebody who is licensed,
Yes.
to do that, and has experience with it.
Yeah, I think one of the things. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, experience in my type of business too, in my industry, right? So I don't want to choose somebody, because I was a service business. I don't want to choose somebody that all they deal with are manufacturers, right?
Yeah. So that's it. I would disagree with you a little bit. I'm being a little biased, right? And here's why. Okay. This is what I say. Generally speaking, every business has four things. I don't care what you are. I don't care if you're a landscaper or a manufacturer. You generally have four things: revenue, cost of goods, expenses, and profit. Those are the four things every business generally has. Not everybody has cost of goods, right?
Right.
So I don't have to be proficient necessarily in your type of industry to know how to sell it. Is there an advantage? Yes, I'm not going to deny that. You're right about that, right? So if I'm selling a pool company, I need to know that pool companies, pool construction companies generally get rebates. So if I've never sold a pool company before, I might not know that. So yes, there is a piece of it that I would say it's beneficial to have somebody who has experience in the industry. I'm not denying that. Is it my deciding factor? Me personally, I would say no. But again, I'm a little biased, right? If somebody came to me and said, I'm trying to think of something I've never sold before. We sold about 250 businesses in the 10 years that I've been here. And one of the cool things is, we're very local, right? In that we've got a 70-mile radius in which we generally sell. We'll go outside of that, but we want a lot of people to come to our office. In our lobby, we have about 115 logos on our wall. So they're local. They're like, oh, I know that company. I know that company. I know that. It builds that confidence that we know what we're talking about because we've sold those businesses. But back to the question or the point is, yes, there is a percentage that I would say does fit that. Yes, you should have some industry experience. I would say 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5. Knowing the best compliment I've ever gotten as a business broker, and that is I've had several CPAs say to me, "You're the first business broker who actually knows how to read financial statements." That's pretty scary to me. So, right, the
Yes.
aptitude from that perspective, I would say is higher than industry specific knowledge, but it is important. There are things that are more important above it, is what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So it's interesting that, because you are trying to just be in that 70-mile radius so that people can come to your office and you are seeing them face to face. It's not just a Zoom call. And so that's interesting. Do you think that, and you might not know the answer to this, but do a lot of uh, business brokers have that same thought process, or do they not care that they're local, that they can just do it now that we're in this Zoom world? Do
I
they
would
not
say
care?
a majority are more local. There are some that would be considered national, right? There's about 3 to 4 franchised business brokers, right? So if I've got an office in Tampa and I'm Transworld and I know somebody who's got a business in Louisville, Kentucky, there's probably a Transworld there. Not to say that I have to refer it to the Transworld in Louisville. I could sell it per se, but the way I look at it is if I've got to, if I've got to go to Iowa to sell something, again, I'm very relational. So it'd be hard for me to do that. Now, if it was a large enough opportunity, I probably would do it. And if it was the right fit, right? It's all about fit for me, right? That's why we're 70 miles. But if somebody called me and said, "Hey, I've got a large company in Jacksonville and I want you to help me sell it," I probably would do that. But I'm going to make the trip to Jacksonville, which is 4.5 hours. And I've sold businesses in Orlando. I've sold businesses in Miami, and I've made the trip. I've made the trip for showings. I've made the trip for negotiations. I've made the trip for buyer seller meetings because I'm relational. And
Mhm.
it's so much more important for me to be in person. And Zoom works, don't get me wrong. But it helps a lot more to be in person. But I would say a majority are local. There are a minority, I would say less than 10% that would be nationwide or outside of
Mhm.
the local area.
But that's, to me, that's something that's on the checklist too. Is is that important? Like for me, that would be very important to me because I'm interested in that relationship. But if you just want to do a transaction,
Yeah,
then it's not going to really matter.
correct.
Other than I want to go back to what you said too, though, is that the laws are different or could be different in each state.
Yes.
So if I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, and you're, in Sarasota, are you going to know the laws for
Most
Kentucky?
most likely not. Now,
Probably not.
here's what I will tell you is I've got a list of states that require a license. And if there is no, if it's a state that's not on the list, I'd be more apt to have a conversation with someone. If it requires a license, I'm just out. So again, refer or relationships. I have a I have a referral network around the country of business brokers in different states that if you called me and said, "Hey, I'm ready to sell my business in Kentucky," I would call John at BHE and be like, "Hey, John, I want to introduce you to Annette. She's thinking about selling our business. Would you be interested in speaking to her?" It's so much easier to do that than, create something. I'm going to be the first one to tell you I can't do something. Like I just, this is your livelihood. This is something, and that's one of the things that we say all the time. This is your business. I'm never going to make you make a choice that you don't want to do. I'm only going to educate you, and hopefully you're going to get more information, at the end of our call or conversation than you did at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Well, this has been very interesting, Dane. I learned a lot about business brokerage, and so when people ask me, I feel a little bit more educated. So
Excellent.
hopefully everybody else that's listened to this has also. So I appreciate you coming today. And I forgot to ask you this. Can I share your information with everybody at the end of
Absolutely.
this?
Absolutely. Yes.
So even if you're not in Sarasota, you could drop a message to Dane
Yeah,
and say, "Hey, saw you. Think you're great."
absolutely.
Or if he
Yeah.
can help you in some way,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure.
I do a lot. It's about education, right? The process is difficult sometimes, and it could be arduous, especially if you've never done it before. So I answer a lot of people's questions. There's a lot of what ifs that I kind of help people through.
Yeah. I think on your website, don't you have some kind of a download worksheet or something?
Mhm.
I saw. Yeah. So that might be helpful too. So I'll put that information at the end of this video, and also information about my course, Hell Bent to Sell, that will help you after you visit with Dane and said, okay, I'm gonna sell my business and I've got some buyers. Now what's the next step? So I've done all that. Now what do I do to help the people that are buying my business get into my culture and understand how to take it from there to your successful exit? So I'll put that information at the end of this video. But thanks, Dane. I really appreciate it. And we may do another session because there was a lot of things that kind of came up in my mind about what you said. So thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Take care. I appreciate it.